What happens when crime no longer hides, but wears a uniform, sits in government offices, and signs treaties? When a dictator launders billions and a drug lord tortures agents in broad daylight, who's truly more dangerous? This is not just a story about drugs. It's a story about how power, unchecked, turns into something far darker. Before we move on to the next part, please give me a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for listening. Power does not corrupt. Fear corrupts. Perhaps the fear of a loss of power. John Steinbeck. In the shadows of Cold War politics and shifting alliances, two men rose from obscurity to dominate the underworld. Manuel Antonio Noriega, Panama's military dictator, and Rafael Caro Quintero, co-founder of Mexico's Guadalajara cartel, operated in different arenas, one in the corridors of power, the other in the blood-soaked fields of narcotics. But their impact reshaped the global drug trade. Their stories are not just about crime, but about how power, fear, and ambition can hijack entire nations. The general who played every side Noriega was not merely a strongman, he was a tactician who thrived in the gray zones of global politics. As a military intelligence officer, he was recruited by the CIA in 1967 and paid handsomely, $322,000 over nearly 2 decades, equivalent to over $850,000 today, for intelligence on leftist movements across Latin America. He was, for a time, Washington's man in Panama, but Noriega never served anyone but himself. By the early 1980s, Panama had become the financial artery of the cocaine trade. Its lax banking laws, strategic location, and Noriega's protection turned it into what DEA officials called the Switzerland of cocaine. An estimated 80% of Colombia's cocaine moved through Panama by 1988. The Bank of Credit and Commerce International, BCCI, protected by Noriega's regime, laundered over $5 billion annually for traffickers. Noriega himself is believed to have hidden more than $300 million in Swiss and Luxembourg accounts. He didn't just tolerate the drug trade, he brokered it. He charged traffickers for safe passage, funneled weapons to the Contras in Nicaragua, and used diplomatic cover to move narcotics across Europe. But Noriega's empire was built on double dealing. When the US could no longer ignore his role, the facade collapsed. In 1989, President George H.W. Bush ordered Operation Just Cause, deploying 27,000 troops to remove a man once on the CIA payroll. Noriega surrendered after taking refuge in the Vatican embassy, ending an era of covert complicity. The Butcher of Guadalajara. While Noriega played the superpowers, Rafael Caro Quintero built a criminal empire on brutality. Born into poverty in Badiraguato, Sinaloa, a region known for producing drug lords, Quintero understood from a young age that violence could be a form of control, and that fear could be more reliable than loyalty. By 1985, he oversaw a drug enterprise that spanned hundreds of marijuana plantations, some over 1,000 acres in size, guarded by a private army of over 300 sicarios trained in paramilitary tactics. His cartel owned fleets of aircraft and even small submarines, smuggling tons of product into the United States. But it was not logistics that made him notorious. It was what he was willing to do to protect his empire. That same year, DEA agent Enrique Kiki Camarena was kidnapped in Guadalajara. What followed was one of the most gruesome murders in modern criminal history. Camarena was tortured for over 30 hours. His skull was drilled while he remained conscious. He was repeatedly injected with adrenaline to keep him alive. Then he was buried alive. A tape recording of his final hours, later recovered by US intelligence, shocked even seasoned agents. Quintero sent a message. No one, not even the US government, was beyond his reach. It wasn't business. It was theater, and fear was the script. Why these stories still matter. Noriega and Quintero ruled differently, but their influence still echoes in today's narco-politics. Noriega pioneered the use of state institutions for organized crime, a model now mirrored in parts of Venezuela and Honduras, where governments and cartels often blur. Quintero's doctrine of fear lives on in cartels like Sinaloa and CJNG, who idolize his methods and even sing about him in narco corridos. One man wore a uniform, the other hid in the jungle, but both turned crime into infrastructure, and both proved that when the pursuit of power outweighs principle, law and morality are the first to vanish. If power reveals a man's true character, then the ways Noriega and Quintero wielded it exposed the machinery of modern criminal empires. They didn't just profit from drugs, they institutionalized the trade, embedding it within governments, militaries, and communities. Their methods differed, but both crafted systems where crime wasn't an act outside the law, it was the law. Noriega understood institutions. He didn't rely on brute force to control Panama, he rewired the state itself. His control of the Panamanian defense forces allowed him to militarize the drug trade. Officers weren't just soldiers, they became traffickers, security for shipments, and protectors of clandestine deals. The army moved cocaine through the Canal Zone and across borders under official protection. Promotions were tied to loyalty, and disloyalty came at a cost. Dissent was crushed quietly. Political purges, disappearances, threats masked as bureaucracy. His greatest tool, however, was finance. Panama's banking system became a haven for dirty money, no questions asked. Offshore laws and shell companies allowed traffickers to clean billions. Through the BCCI, a bank that collapsed in scandal in the early 1990s, Noriega facilitated the laundering of over $23 billion in illicit funds. No briefcases stuffed with cash, no shady backroom deals, just signatures, transfers, and blind-eyed regulators. Diplomacy, too, became a weapon. Noriega's inner circle held diplomatic passports, giving them immunity and access. They used consulates and embassies to transport cocaine into Europe and Asia, hiding in plain sight. When accusations surfaced, Noriega shrugged them off with nationalist rhetoric or quiet threats. His ability to cloak crime in the language of governance made him almost untouchable, until it didn't. Quintero, on the other hand, built a kingdom of terror. Where Noriega corrupted institutions, Quintero hollowed them out from the inside. Bribes flowed like water, an estimated $50 million a year paid to Mexican officials, judges, and police. Entire divisions of the federal judicial police were compromised. Arrests were staged, prosecutions sabotaged, and rivals eliminated with the silent approval of those meant to enforce the law. But it wasn't just money that bought loyalty, it was fear. Quintero industrialized violence. His cartel developed systems of torture not just for information, but for dominance. Bodies were dissolved in acid, pozole they called it, so that nothing remained. Prison massacres were ordered not for necessity, but to make a point. A whisper of betrayal could mean death, not just for the accused, but for their families. At the same time, Quintero understood the importance of image. He sponsored narco corridos that turned him into a folk legend, songs that portrayed him as a rebellious hero, misunderstood and feared. He backed the spread of Santa Muerte cults, fusing crime with faith, turning death into a deity and giving cartel foot soldiers a twisted moral code. To many young men in rural Mexico, joining the cartel was no longer a crime. It was a calling. The contrast between the two men is stark. Noriega preferred control, making deals, creating dependencies. He used fear, but with restraint, always calculated. Quintero unleashed it without limit, making examples of anyone who defied him. One manipulated systems from within, the other burned them down and built his own. Yet the result was the same. A generation of criminals learned that the state could be bought, and that violence could replace law. What Noriega built through politics and paper, Quintero forged with blood and fire. Both left behind blueprints, not just for crime, but for how to rule without conscience. And in the void they created, new monsters emerged, studying their methods and perfecting them. To weigh the danger of two men like Noriega and Quintero is to measure different forms of destruction. One operated behind desks and diplomatic immunity, the other from safe houses and hidden airstrips. One corrupted governments, the other dismembered them. And yet, both men left behind chaos that continues to shape the present. Noriega's strength lay in his ability to weaponize trust. He convinced the United States that he was an ally in the fight against communism, while secretly working with the Medellin cartel. He offered intelligence, protected American interests, and played the role of regional stabilizer, all while profiting from the same cartels he was supposedly fighting. His betrayal wasn't just of law or morals, it was geopolitical. When the US finally turned on him, it wasn't just about drugs, it was about the embarrassment of being deceived, manipulated, and used. The 1989 invasion of Panama cost hundreds of lives, displaced thousands, and destabilized the region for years. Noriega's downfall sent a message, but it came too late. His model had already spread: state-sponsored drug trafficking, covert complicity, the transformation of political power into a criminal enterprise. Venezuela, Honduras, Guinea-Bissau, each has since seen governments accused of similar collusion. Noriega may have fallen, but the system he mastered didn't. Quintero, by contrast, never sought legitimacy. He didn't negotiate with the powerful. He challenged them directly. The torture and murder of DEA agent Enrique Camarena was an act of pure defiance, a direct assault on American authority. And it worked. For a time, the US pulled agents out of Mexico. Cooperation between the two countries strained. The message was chillingly effective: interfere, and you die slowly. Unlike Noriega, Quintero didn't fall in battle or surrender in a diplomatic standoff. He was captured in 1985, but not by soldiers or police. He was betrayed by his own. Even then, his story didn't end. He was released from prison in 2013 due to a legal technicality and vanished, re-emerging as a ghost in cartel mythology. Despite being one of the most wanted men in the world, he evaded capture for nearly a decade. In that time, his image only grew. Not just a trafficker, but a symbol of Mexico's impunity crisis. Statistically, Quintero's violence caused more death. Cartel-related killings attributed to his leadership and influence reached into the thousands. His role in militarizing the drug war helped turn parts of Mexico into active conflict zones. Economically, the drug empire he helped create caused over $30 billion in damages to US communities. His legacy, unlike Noriega's, is alive, carried by the very cartels that now dominate the hemisphere. Noriega is rarely remembered today outside history books. Quintero, in contrast, remains a name whispered in fear, sung in songs, studied by future narcos. One lost power when the United States revoked its support. The other built a system where fear itself was power, and where death, if done publicly enough, ensured survival. In the end, Noriega was a strategist who overplayed his hand and fell when his masters turned. Quintero was a predator who never stopped hunting. If Noriega exposed how fragile political morality can be, Quintero revealed how quickly society can dissolve when violence becomes the only law. They didn't just break the rules, they rewrote them, and long after their stories fade, the systems they left behind keep running, fueled by new faces, but born from the same blueprints of control, corruption, and fear. Manuel Noriega turned a nation into a vault for cartel wealth. Rafael Caro Quintero turned fear into a legacy. One wore medals, the other wore scars. But both proved a chilling truth. When the line between state and syndicate disappears, justice becomes optional, and survival political. So now we ask you, who posed the greater threat? The general who sold out nations, or the killer who never needed one? If you found this story worth your time, hit that like button, share it with someone who loves true crime history, and don't forget to subscribe. More stories like this, raw, real, and unapologetic, are coming soon. Your thoughts matter. Who do you think left the deeper scar on the world? Noriega or Quintero? Drop your take in the comments. Let's talk.